Welcome, everyone. It looks like we already have about 30 attendees who are in here. So welcome to everyone. We're really excited for today's event. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because we have an amazing lineup of a lot of different speakers, and I want to make sure that they have enough time to share their stories and perspectives. If we haven't connected before, my name is Kelly, and I am the founder and executive director of Impact Travel Alliance. ITA is a global community and nonprofit that's aimed at improving the world through travel. And we do this by educating travelers how to explore in a way that has a positive impact on local communities and protects our environment. Our event today is produced by our local chapter in Toronto. So I'm very excited to be able to pass the mic over to Wafa. I was just talking to her about how ITA is a global platform where we're really able to support and amplify local voices. So without further ado, I will pass it off to her.
Thank you, Kelly. So here we are today. We are going to provide you as travelers with the resources and tools that you need to make memorable travel experiences and plans with confidence. I would like to welcome our guest panelist today, Trevor Benson, from VP of Destination Development at Culinary Tourism Alliance, and Sébastien Desnoyers Picard, Chief Marketing Officer at the Indigenous Tourism Association in Canada, Rachel Dodds, Professor at Ted Rogers School of Hospitality and Tourism Management and Director of Sustaining Tourism, a consultancy company, Omar Mcdadi, Field Unit Superintendent at Rouge National Urban Park at Parks Canada. Before starting, I would like to share with you a Canadian land acknowledgement statement. I respectfully acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations, now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. This territory is subject to the dish with one spoon, wampum belt covenant, an agreement to harmoniously share and care for the Great Lakes region. Toronto has been caretaken by Anishinaabe nations, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and its current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation. Today we're going to talk about Indigenous tourism too, but we're going to start with Trevor Benson, and with this acknowledgement of land and this connection with land, the best thing we can do is to talk about food tourism. So Trevor is the developer of destinations and emerging destinations and culinary tourism in rural Canada. And up to you, Trevor. Would you like to start by presenting what you do, and then we go to questions?
Sure. Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I should say that I'm joining in today from my home office in Ottawa, which is located in the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And with no intention of stealing your thunder, Sebastian, I just want to say that a great way to immerse yourself in diverse cultures and to explore Canada is to enjoy the amazing Indigenous experiences that are on offer. And to your point, Wafa, many of those include connecting more closely with peoples and their foodways. So I have the pleasure of joining you on behalf of the Culinary Tourism Alliance, where, as mentioned, I work on destination development through a consultancy that we operate as a social enterprise. Happy to take any questions, but I should say that within the context of the pandemic and hopefully coming out of the corner and into the post-pandemic era, we are particularly excited about the rejuvenation of and the reinterest in local food, and we see a bit of the silver lining in relation to kind of these stay-at-home orders and the necessary conditions that we've been living in for the last year as actually being really, really great for connecting more with food. Everybody's cooked a lot more, eaten out a lot less, and is a closer appreciation for where their food comes from, how to work with that food, the people, the places, the processors associated with that food. And that is now ingrained after 12 plus months into our mindset. And we feel as though this will help to inspire more food-based travel and inspire travel that includes more food and drink-based experience. So we're really looking forward to this opening up many, many opportunities for rural and remote destinations, more emerging destinations, and providing kind of new opportunities and conduits for existing destinations to kind of round out and make for more multi-sensory in-destination experiences for visitors. You just unmute there, Wafa.
Yeah. Okay. So Sebastian, would you like to make a quick introduction?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Trevor. I mean, you're always stealing my punch, but I mean, I can't really argue with you. I think the moment is right to be starting to engage a bit more with the Indigenous communities. I'm from myself, from the Huron-Wendat community here, based out of just outside of Quebec City, about 15 minutes away from the Chateau Frontenac, which is pretty iconic for the province. Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of different mood changes, and I think more and more we are seeing that we need to be more open to cultures, more open to together and united, because I mean we were never going to get through COVID if we're not, but we've seen some issues arising, and I think it's good to take the time to acknowledge some of the issues that we are facing and try to balance that in a way that we can all move forward and bridge some of the gaps that might be existing. As far as ourselves, like I work for the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. I'm glad. I'm not sure about you, Trevor. Obviously, you don't look like it, but you said people actually eat less during COVID. I think that's completely off. I've been eating like it's just crazy. So I'll have to argue with this, with you on this. But having said that, I think it's great. And there's no better way than discovering Canada by the food and the culture. I always call this a multi-sensorial experience. You said that as well, so it's kind of funny. But I think it's COVID has brought us and changed the way we will travel and moving forward. So I think, especially around food tourism, the parks, and the rest of the partners in Indigenous tourism will lead some of the way and definitely offer some really good products and experiences that people can learn and at the same time discover the rich heritage of our country.
Great, thank you for this introduction. We move to Omar. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and about Parks Canada?
Sure, and thank you very much for having me today and as part of this panel. And I'm very honored to be in such esteemed company. We've worked very closely with Rachel and with Trevor. It's a great pleasure to meet you as well, Sebastian. And I'm the field unit superintendent of Rouge National Urban Park. I work for Parks Canada. We are creating and managing the first and only national park in an urban area. It's located in the Greater Toronto Area in Canada. I'm so lucky in my career. Previously, I've worked in places like Banff, Yoho, Kootenay, Pacific Rim National Parks, and now I've come back home to the Greater Toronto Area to work on this incredible project. We are so honored to work with 10 First Nations, including the Huron-Wendat Nation, where Sebastian is from, in creating, developing, and co-designing this national park. What I'm most proud of in terms of this park is the fact that it protects natural and cultural heritage, but also farmland. That is very unique in the system of protected areas in Canada. It's the only national park with an objective to safeguard farmland. And we have some of the richest, rarest, and most fertile soil in the country here in Rouge National Urban Park. I have some pictures to share later on about ways that we can approach travel coming out of a pandemic in a really immersive and yet responsible way. There's been so many challenges over the last year in terms of how we operate the park during a pandemic, and as well as an increase in visitation, the likes of which we've never seen before, ever. And that's because people are searching for places to go. Here in the Greater Toronto Area, we've been in a stay-at-home lockdown for many, many months. We just came out of 100 days. And even non-traditional, the winter is usually not a busy time in the park, but this year it's been exceptionally busy because people are looking for, more than ever, a really great places to go in the outdoors, and the need for public urban green spaces has never been more acute than the present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar, which leads us to this last statement leads us directly to Rachel, who's expert in over-tourism. And would you like to introduce yourself, Rachel? Just a quick.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here and with all the panelists. And there's some really great people who are attendees too, who I'm sure will have some valuable insight to share. I was just going down the list. I agree. I have done quite a lot of work on over-tourism. In fact, I'll try and do anything to get the tourism industry to be more responsible and sustainable. And I think that the key thing that we need to focus on is everybody has talked a lot about sustainability and regeneration and consciousness, call it whatever name you'd like to call it. But it's still a lot of talk without a lot of action. And I think that's the real key thing is coming out of a pandemic. There's a lot of pent up demand. I know I would just love to go somewhere. But where are we going to go and how are we going to travel and what are we going to do when we get there? That I think are the questions that we really need to focus on so that it becomes more than just words. So I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, we're jumping to a couple of questions, but let's see from the audience, where are you from? Like, can you just type in the chat or comments, where are you coming from? What country or what city? Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple of Toronto, Oakville, yeah. And meanwhile, we'll go back to Trevor. Trevor, would you be able to tell us a little bit about food tourism, including agritourism, and how would it look like in the post-pandemic Canada?
Sure.
And how is it for new and emerging destination? How does it look?
Sure, and thanks for the question, Wafa. So I think what excites me, and I'm not a self-identified foodie or gastropornographer or what have you. I'm motivated to travel, to experience food, and to make food a meaningful part of my visitor experiences or travel experiences. But what we're excited about is over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, we're seeing a movement away from food tourism, culinary tourism, or gastronomy tourism. They're all synonyms, being specifically focused on a market segment, being that foodie. And we're seeing kind of more focus on the food-connected consumer at large, which is a group of people, in the 80+ percentile range that are interested in food and where their food comes from. And the point that I was making about eating less out, eating less at restaurants, et cetera, is a blessing in disguise, allowing us to connect more to our food over the last year and having to cook for ourselves and look at, where our food-based value chains are, where our supply comes from. And as a result, have an increased and maybe a renewed interest in food and food stuff. So what that means for destinations and what we're seeing as being, and we're hopeful for, is to see food be a more meaningful part of tourism experiences at large, and not simply being looked at as a niche market that's attracting very small segments of maybe higher value customers. So it can absolutely be a driver of increased economic impact and a stimulator of more kind of meaningful connections with a place. So kind of that's our perspective, what we're excited by. We see, Wafa, around your question, agritourism being absolutely a part of kind of capital F food tourism, if you will. And because we've been in these spaces, to your point, Omar, whether or not it's in a national park, provincial park, or just, taking more walks, what it's doing is opening up an awareness to all of these amazing places in Canada. I know is the subject of today's conversation, that we may not normally be aware of, and know that we can kind of have food experiences and drink experiences in those places. So rural destinations, we're thinking of all the breweries and cideries and meaderies and distilleries located in non-urban environments. So it's great for dispersal, and it's great for looking at potentially urban environments as springboards into more kind of peri-urban and rural adventures, which, if they can be driven by food, then we're laughing. And everybody knows that, one of the first things that you're going to do in a destination is eat. One of the last things you're going to do is eat or drink. And those memories that you take with you are always, related to your senses. So when you close your eyes, food is only ever going to become more present in your travel memories.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for this. And so, how can Canadian engage and people from Toronto, for example, engage more into food tourism? Where do they should look to find those experiences, you think?
I would, so I'm in Ottawa, but our organization is based out of Toronto. We work nationally and internationally. If I was living in the GTA still, or if I was making recommendations to someone in the Toronto area or any destination for that matter in Canada, I'd be looking for food and drink experiences in every visitor experience. So I wouldn't be forcing myself to look only for food and drink experiences at a festival or an event or go on a food tour, but I'd be open to looking at how I can enjoy food as I'm in Rouge National Park. How I can enjoy food of a place if it's in and around Quebec City where Sebastian's located, or in Toronto where Rachel's located, maybe in the outside urban environment. And it's how can I make food in my multiple senses a part of every one of my experiences.
Great, thank you, Sebastian. So thank you, Trevor. And I would move to Sebastian to ask about tips for travelers to immerse in the culture and to develop those and live those meaningful and transformative experiences while discovering the culture of First Nation.
Yeah. So I mean, this summer we did an important research to guide our marketing initiative, and that was to have the perceptions of Canadians towards Indigenous tourism. And some of the findings were actually pretty striking, and we saw that obviously tourism will be an ever-changing topic, and the way, with now the borders being closed and some of the communities wanting and remaining closed to protect their elders as an example, but also for safety reasons, and also some of the bubbles. But one thing that we saw, and it was striking to see that, obviously people are in need of seeing different things, wanting to escape the cities. Omar spoke about that a little bit earlier as well. And I think last year was the first year as well that there was some record of people getting lost in forests. It's for me like another interesting number when you follow this, but people are wanting to obviously discover untamed territories, learning at the source, unknown stories, the multi-generational knowledge being passed down as a living knowledge. People want to go back to the more simplistic approach, return to the source. And I think we saw a big increase in fishing, hunting, foraging, anything, that goes from growing your own products, traditional medicines, and learning how to disconnect. This is exactly, what Indigenous tourism is. This is the core of our experience, right? So people normally that are getting our experience are moved or touched. It's really about the simplistic but yet extremely rich, enlightening experience that that our people can offer. And like I said, people want to travel differently, obviously, right now. From it used to be from a very large group, an audience, to go and get off, take a picture, and that was it. Like that was part of their trip, was just to picture some of the key highlights that on the itinerary. But now, people have moved from, experiential travel now to a more transformative travel. And I think this is really what people are searching for. And that's a good way to connect and bridge those gaps, is really by connecting with the people, connecting with the food, the culture, finding out about, who the Indigenous people are in our days and what are the issues that we are facing. Not everyone, I think we have a tendency to overgeneralize everything. We think that, for example, Wendake, which is a very urban community, 15 minutes away from downtown Quebec City, that all the rest of the communities are the same, but it's really not the case. Like some people are more remote, and obviously that comes with different challenges. But I think what people want to see is how we live, how we are connected, with Mother Earth and in relations to all the elements that surrounds us. I mean, obviously we are the people from the land, and yes, we have evolved, but our people can teach so much about sustainable development, about environments and drastic changes that we've seen over the years, because we are the users of the ground, like of the land. We've been there for thousands of years, and this passed down, knowledge that's been done from a generation to another one. It's what helps, and guides some of the research on the land, because like we've seen the change in, animals passing by. We've seen all of this, but I think now people want to try to have that connection and really learning from the plants, learning from, like being able to disconnect, changing their way of thinking and taking a time to breathe. And I think like that's something that we still struggle to do. But it's really something that, has to be learned. We're connected to the land, connected to one another, elevating us all together. And for too long, for us in our communities, we've been told not to speak, right? It's always been under the Indian Act, and it's the oldest application of law in Canada, 1876. But now I think people are finding their voices, and it's unique, and that's really the best way, is to go out. There's go to a community, want and expect. I guess not expect, but just go in with an open mind, and then I'm sure you'll be moved, you'll be touched. And then you'll find that, this connection is very strong. And hopefully at the end of this, you'll be as well a messenger, and you'll be one that can help us all be united, all be one in the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sebastian. And I think, the Indigenous communities have lots of their own ways of knowing that they are ready to share, and it would teach us about how to be better connected to the land.
Yeah, I think in the end message is sorry, but the end message is really like, Indigenous tourism is way more than, powwow dances, and, it's everything, from the food to the, like we have some very talented chef. It's through, guided wildlife in a national park. It's through the artisans, through their art and the complexity of the pieces they create. It's through medicinal plants, spas. It's through canoeing, watching Northern Lights and the storytelling behind this. It's through music, poets. Everything gravitates around tourism. And I think that's the beauty of our, our industry, is really the fact that we are able to have a multi-sensorial experience. And it's just everyone is inside of the big circle.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. I've seen something about the growing food experience in Manitoba Island in Ontario. And it seems like an amazing project where kids share in the planting of seeds and collecting the seeds. And it's just an amazing experiential trip to do with kids, or to learn more about our connection with the land. So I think that's these are amazing opportunities that are open now, and that we can engage in to learn more. And so Rachel, what do you think would sustainable opportunity look like in the light of all those offers, I guess?
Ooh, nothing like the big loaded question. I guess I think truly we need to shift from the how to the who and the what. For so long we've said, how many people can we attract? How much money can we make? It's always on the how. Instead, we need to start thinking on the who, as in who benefits, and what, as in at what cost. So if we're going to engage in experiences, we're all looking for something. We can buy whatever we want, and probably we've all spent a ton of money on shopping and things because we've been stuck at home for so long, and now we're craving the experience, the transformation, or the opportunity to learn and have something that stays with us. But when we go and do all these things, we also need to be conscious of the impact we're having. So is it just going to be us that benefits, or is it going to be the local communities who also benefit? Are we going to all swarm to the same place and have the same issues of over-tourism that we had in 2019? And some places are still having, some of the parks are overrun. I could share some wonderful pictures of places like Whistler that have had, lineups up the hill kind of thing. That's not an experience, right? That's not a truly fun time for anyone, and especially in a time of social distancing. So if we want to be more responsible, then we need to start focusing on who benefits and at what cost. And when we do that, when we go to a park, we can be cognizant of making sure, really simple things. You keep your bathroom clean at home, keep your park clean when you go out and visit it. Bring your own mug. carpool when we're allowed to, but take public transport when we're allowed to. We've been very sad. Have people serve you coffee. This is like the best thing that you could do. Sorry, thank you.
So the invoice is in the post.
But I think we need to start thinking about what impact do we have rather than just what's in it for us. And tourism has been very, very hedonistic, as in I deserve it, so I'm going to go and do something for me. Whereas, you know, listening to Trevor and to Sebastian, and I'm sure Omar will also parrot it, it's not just about us, it's about everybody around us. And if we increase the benefits for everyone, then it's a multi-beneficial thing. And that's when the true experience comes. That's when we really are transformed as human beings, I think.
I just add really great points, Rachel. I think I picked up on the language of co-design that you were using, Omar, and I think that's really important. It's something that we take really seriously as part of our work with any communities and tourism stakeholders. Is this idea that we're facilitators, we're in it, we're participating, but it's a co-design process, and the impacts, whether or not they're positive and or negative, need to be owned by the communities behind a tourism product or any experiences, and those impacts are not all financial. They're not negatively financial or positively financial. They're environmental, they're social, and otherwise. And that's, I think, to your point, Rachel, is really, really important to stress, is that there's so much more than just heads and beds and dollars spent on food and drink or otherwise. And it's the types of change that can be facilitated through more purposeful tourism design, and then on the flip side of that, more intentional and kind of conscious travel.
And I think
sorry, I was just going to go ahead, Rachel. No, yeah.
There was a really good question from, I think, Natalie Lowe in the question and answer on how do we normalize these kind of behaviors. And I think that's a real key, is that I think the industry, especially, for example, in Canada, probably the States and all over the world, they've realized that tourism has a huge economic impact, but it also has a huge social impact. And so we need to start normalizing these by not just thinking about tourism, but the transportation sector, the agriculture sector, all our other industries and policies within our countries need to start recognizing that tourism is cross industry. And that's how we start to normalize these things, not just by voting with our wallets, but also ensuring that these kinds of things become mainstream.
It was, and Omar, if you allow me, that was kind of the point I was making with the silver lining, is we not by choice, have normalized eating more locally and shorter supply chains. So why change our habits? Why not go into tourism and travel, recognizing that the lowest carbon footprint you can leave through your consumption is through eating food that's, from down the road. And as a result, you're also going to get a more meaningful and experience and connection to the place that you're in by eating, at a shorter value chain. Why eat something that's being flown in or shipped in when there's great people and stories behind foods that represent place?
Great, thank you for this intervention, Trevor. And to Omar, to talk about Parks Canada, which are expecting, I guess, more visitors this summer. How would visitors become part of the solution? How can they contribute to a better experience for all while they're experiencing the parks?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd like to share a few photos and put it into the traveler's perspective in terms of, hey, there are real concrete, tangible, and common sense ways that we can all, and I put myself at the top of the list because I can't wait till we can travel again. I love traveling, and I think it's just one of the most incredible gifts that you can, it's one of the most incredible experiences you can have as a human being. And I think that's why we're all here today, because we love people. We love cultures. We love immersing ourselves in different cultures, in different worlds. And we have such love and respect for that. And we miss that so much. So I'm going to just share my screen quickly here. And I'll be brief. And while it's loading up here, there we go. So yeah, just really quickly, Parks Canada has been around, certainly not as long as our Indigenous partners, but for a while, and we're the world's first national park service. Just here's a map of the system. It's a massive system of protected areas, one of the largest in the world. The area I'm going to focus on is the Rouge in the Greater Toronto area. It's that little small purple dot on the map there. Here's just a little picture. It's one of the largest urban parks in the world. Just quickly going through this, it protects nature, culture, and agriculture. in terms of being part of the solution, there's just so many practical tips that we can provide. I'm actually, yeah, of course, following public health guidelines is super important. If you can get vaccinated, you really should, and then continuing to follow public health guidelines, which vary from place to place, region to region. But that is a huge part of the solution, and that helps us get back to whatever normal was. I'm going to say scrap this. I put this in, but I don't believe in it. I think we're all zoomed out, and I think we're done with virtual. And so I'm just I put this in here because there are a lot of great ways to immerse yourself ahead of time, like this format here, to better prepare for visiting. I still think that's quite valid. I can't tell you the issues we've had with garbage dumping pollution. I thought we were past this from a societal perspective, but we're not, and we're not alone. I read articles in the BBC, The Guardian, the New York Times, etc., about this being a global issue during the pandemic. Little things matter. Pack out what you bring in, and that's hugely important. Those are pictures from the last year. Rachel talked about being prepared. You have to be prepared because the world is different now. We don't have as many amenities as we regenerate and get back to business as usual. So coming prepared, coming with food, coming with water, those things are so important. Sometimes you need to moderate expectations. We've been struggling just to clean washrooms, and so sometimes the washrooms, and very often the washrooms look like this, particularly in our park, because we're still building it. And so Rachel noted, how important it is to clean the washroom that you use or keep it clean, and that's hugely important, helpful, and it's helpful from a public health perspective too. We've got staff on the ground. I think people are always saying now, treat frontline workers, treat everyone with kindness and respect. When you wear a uniform, it draws attention, and people sometimes want to touch you, and that's been an issue. So just being mindful that there are people out there doing their jobs, trying to stay safe, and that's super helpful. I noticed that Boris from Park Bus is here, and so if you can take sustainable transportation options, you should. They're especially available in a park like the one I work in, which is in a city. There's public transit. You can get there by bike. You can walk there depending on where you stay. And then there's an amazing service in Canada, in different parts of Canada, called Park Bus, which for many years has provided a shuttle service, a free shuttle to the park on the weekends in the summer. Avoid visiting during peak hours. I think that's really key and never more apparent than now. And I just want to flip to like the flip side of that is these are all photos that my colleagues and I have taken between the hours of 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. And you can have the most incredible experience in the most densely populated part of the country and not see anybody if that's what you're after at this time. This is in a field. This is the same field, just different sides of the field, a coyote and a deer at 5 a.m. in Toronto. Similarly, a cottontail and a painted turtle in Toronto early in the morning. Here we have a barn swallow in Toronto at 5 a.m. in the morning. So there's a reward there. If you get up early, you can completely avoid the crowds and have, I think, the most incredible visitor experience and help keep things sustainable. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Omar, for this lovely pictures and lovely wildlife you can see, right? But from to go back to the questions from the audience, we have a couple of questions here, like how can we make Indigenous tourism more accessible from a cost perspective, whilst maintaining authenticity and cultural sensitivity? This is a question for Sebastian, I guess, but I'll take a minute before opening for you, Sebastian, to answer, like, to add to Omar's, like the urban parks and urban trails in Toronto are amazing, and it's just in our backyard. This connection with nature is just great and mutual. Like it's there, but we have to respect it and we have to take care of it. So we're stewards of this land, and to use it, we have to respect it as well. So this is just one thing that I stress when we do our own hiking trips. We do urban hikes here in Toronto, and people are discovering things that they wouldn't expect it is in their backyard. And this is one of the parks, like here, the Rouge Park is in the backyard of Toronto too, like accessible by the park bus, by the train. So it's an amazing place to discover wilderness and nature. Yeah, so back to you, Sebastian, in terms of cost. Yeah, how do you think we can engage into those experiences while it's usually costly?
Yeah, well, I guess I would just start, like price is just a set barrier for your brain. Like for me, pricing is one thing. If you get enough for your dollars, then normally you could care less about the pricing because you want to live something that is completely different. But I want to reiterate though, and before, like, it is sometimes a misconception, but most Indigenous experiences are actually located pretty near cities. Like that is either Quebec, Montreal, Ottawa. If you're Toronto, obviously Vancouver. Vancouver Island sees a lot of Indigenous tourism. Yes, there are some remote experiences, but there's also the remote but not so remote experiences. So, I mean, I think we have to be careful when we talk about, being expensive. I think there's experiences, that ranges from, like a visit at a museum for $15 to, living a guided tour for an hour of Stanley Park for $40, while there's also sleeping inside of a teepee under the Northern Lights for, I don't know, like igloo for $6,000. And if you go see the flow edge with an Inuit guide and polar bears, and then you want to go see narwhals, then you're looking at, like more like a $15,000. So I think it all depends on what kind of experience that you want to do. But I think if only people would knew the strong connections to those remote areas, I think pricing would never be an issue. For me, like the strongest connections and ties that I've always had as far as an Indigenous person, but it's been to the north and to those remote areas, because like it's so raw, it's so powerful, it's untamed, like it's just, and the beauty of it is it's actually unpredictable. And I love the unpredictable because that also takes you outside of your comfort zone. You never know, oh my God, like today's minus 60. Wonder if the snowmobile's going to start. Yeah, no, it doesn't. So, I mean, you walk. And that's the fun part of the story is, like you learn how to do things differently. And it's where you see that, like the playground, your land offers so much opportunity, and you realize how resilient and resourceful those guys are, like the locals and the guides, because like, yeah, like it's amazing. And like once you start achieving stuff, building your own shelter as an example, building your own igloo makes you proud, of achieving stuff. And for me, like even as an Indigenous person, like just building my own shelter, my own igloo, and even though I grew up, on the bush, it's still like very rewarding. So that's amazing. And for me, like I always like to talk about, remoteness for me, like means freedom. There's nothing else around you. It means opportunity to connect with people. This is the place where, wildlife lives, where polar bears are the king, where the natural wonders are actually under visited. And it's not like here in Quebec with the Montmorency Falls where they see 10,000s of people every day. It's where the tides are the highest. It's where the lights are dancing. You don't see that everywhere. It's where the traditional languages are still untouched and unspoken. It's where there's no internet. And for me, it's very important at every place. It's also a way to learn the history of our country and when you can fully immerse and disconnect. So when you start looking at what you're getting for that dollar amount, it's actually fairly cheap. And yes, there's cost issues on the flights, but people have to understand as well, and I think most people don't, is yeah, it's a mandatory service. Like they need to have airlines that go there. It's subsidized by the government, and most of the time as for example, the Inuit government. But when they go out, there's only like 25 people on that flight. So 25 people on that flight, they can't sustain. So, I mean, they bring on a lot of cargo, but when you bring cargo by plane, it also means that the cost of living, the cost of getting the goods are so expensive. So if you look at the 2-liter bottle of Coke, yeah, no, you're paying like $20. Yeah, that's the price, because liquids are heavy. Heavy by plane means a lot of dollars, and people don't understand that. Fresh produce, salad, lettuce. Yeah, you don't really get that. It has to be, flown in. It has to come either by boat. There's very limited access by boat as well. So, I mean, that's why the price becomes so expensive in those remote areas. But it's just so unique, and I swear, people that will go up north or to those remote areas living with the indigenous communities will be changed forever. And then, you know what, you get to brag about it. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Like, you can talk to it about your social media and then post those amazing images of what you've been doing. Hey, you know what, buddy, I made my shelter. I slept in an igloo. I laid on a caribou hide. And then when I snuck my head outside, what I could see was the Northern Lights, and it was an elder playing drum and telling me the meaning of the Northern Lights. If that's not on your bucket list, like, I just don't know what's going to make it to your bucket list. So
Changed forever, Sebastian, seems like a strong value proposition for cost offsetting a high price.
Yeah, I just wish that, like, everything was more affordable, like, as far as food and products up there. Like, it's just very difficult, and not even for, like, there's many different ways. That's why a lot of people still live off the land, and I think that's a value that's important. But at the same time, for consumer and for restaurants and business owners up there, like, it would be nice if we could find a ways. But again, like after that, what is it? Like, are we gonna build a road to get there? If we are building road, yes, there's capacity, yes, there's money, yes, but at the same time, you're opening the risk of losing the language, losing the culture, over tourism, unprotected. And, as far as our values, I take Nunavik as a perfect example of that. They created 4 national parks. And 4 national parks for themselves, for the Katvik regional government, that is managed by the Inuit communities, and that helps to protect some areas. So it's good. There's not going to be any mining there. It's good because there's not going to be any, like forestry there. It's owned and it's managed by the communities, and the resources belongs to the communities. So that's amazing. It's a way to move forward and to be self-determined.
Great, thank you. Maybe now with more people heading north, there would be more flights or less price. We hope so. But I did work with an Inuit tourism business, and it's amazing the things that they can offer and their knowledge. The fact that you're in nowhere, like feeling as if in no man's land, but they have the knowledge and you depend on this, plus a satellite. I know they have like connections, but the way that they know their land, and it's and depending on this and learning from them to read the elements and to live with the elements is an amazing experience. And yeah, so maybe with more people heading north, we're going to have more of these offers. And
please, not too many people though, because when I go, I want to make sure I have a room to go. Okay? So please take it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we have some questions here also for Rachel, like what are some sources to get informed about all, Sebastian or Rachel? So what are some sources to get informed about all the Indigenous destinations and the highlights of each? Maybe websites, blogs, organizations?
Yeah, I'll take this on, obviously. We do have an amazing platform called destinationindigenous.ca. So that's where we have our microsites. So depending on what you're searching for, adventure, nature, products, culinary, and others, we have microsites designed for your needs. So that's obviously the first place to look at. But we also have, like, we work with many great partners. Parks Canada is one of them. Like, we're right now looking at a new project with them, and should be finalized very shortly, and helping out and helping bring Indigenous operators and products and experiences to the park spaces. So that, I think that's a very nice piece of, you know, part of the reconciliations and working and promoting. They know it's a bonus to them, and we know we can use their network. So it's really a positive synergy that we have there. WestJet is a strong partner in getting our consumer there. So, I mean, we work with them on, for example, if people are searching for packages, so they can find Indigenous packages through their WestJet Vacations as well. Destination Canada has a lot of information, but we also work with strong partners across the country. Each, like, we're the national organization, but in each provinces across the country and territories, they are Indigenous provincial associations as well. Indigenous Tourism BC, Indigenous Tourism Ontario, Indigenous Tourism Quebec, Indigenous Tourism Manitoba. So there's a bunch of them out there. So if you just type Indigenous tourism and the name of the province, you would fall on their website as well. And that also brings you more opportunities and more ways to discover Indigenous culture and Indigenous experiences across this country.
Mm-hmm. That's a great resource, in fact, for people who want to look for Indigenous experiences around them, close to home. And this is one of the things that all marketing in research about the future of tourism, they're saying that during the pandemic and after the pandemic, most of the people are going to look for experiences around their own homes. They want to stay close to their medical resources, probably. So amazing, yeah. I'm looking at more questions, yeah.
I guess I'll just hop out and hand the key off.
Chris, yeah? Chris, you're talking to us?
He's so excited. He's speechless.
Yeah.
I was just thinking maybe we should open it up to the audience if they have questions or comments, and we can try and answer them. I know we've been trying to answer them in chat, but it would be great to hear people's perspectives or interests. And I just wanted to add to Sebastian's comment. He gave pretty much the all-inclusive answer for how to find things, with only missing one. And I would say there's a lot of really great social enterprises out there. Organizations, Omar mentioned earlier, Park Bus, places like that have really tried to be really integrative and ensure that they've been more responsible in their approach and work with local partners and making sure that the money goes into the hands of the local people. And so don't forget about them, because I think they're really trying. And a lot of the regional tourism organizations have seen the light to realize that that's a big draw for their areas. I know Region 12, which is up sort of Algonquin Way, has really made a huge effort to try and incorporate Indigenous voices and really reach out to Indigenous stakeholders to make sure that they are included in the process. So I would say if you can't find it, I would ask, right? If you go onto a website, a tourism website, and they don't have something, just ask. And that's the prompt that we need to push as tourists. If we don't ask, then people don't always think that there's a demand. And the more we ask, I'm awful. Every single hotel I've ever been into, I ask them about their recycling. I'm one of those annoying people, but I think if we all did that, then we wouldn't have an issue of littering. If we berated someone, if we left somewhere cleaner than when we found it, then we wouldn't have such issues of litter, because those are the kinds of things we really need to integrate into our day-to-day behavior and our kids' behavior.
Yeah.
Can I just add quickly, because I think it was a question from, I think, Meditate for Change. My response was social enterprise is an approach or an option. It was in relation to funding. I think on the consumer side, I mean, it's being open to social enterprise as being a tourism provider. And on the flip side, if you're not-for-profit or charity, to see social enterprise as an option for providing tourism experiences to the benefit of the organization. I know yesterday and tomorrow, I've been working on feasibility and business planning with the Saskatoon Food Council, and we're developing a food tour company called Just Food Tours as a way for that food council to contribute to its community in collaboration with Tourism Saskatoon, create a positive economic impact, allow it to drive its mission and mandate as an organization, and ultimately provide an amazing tourism experience that goes beyond servicing just elemental needs of visitors and actually exposing them to, local food system challenges, issues, and having them engage in more meaningful travel. So I think it's a really important point, Rachel, and thanks again for the question by Meditate for Change.
Great. Thank you, Trevor, for this. There's also something for Trevor here, like in the chat, but we're open for any questions that will come in if we can do that. Also, we need to incorporate off-season canning preserves so we can't get stuck into seasonality trap. So it's just a comment or a tip for Trevor. What do you say?
Yeah, we're in total agreement. We've always said that winter shoulder season tourism development is culinary tourism development. There's no reason why you want to drive people to a destination during the high season when food, the last I checked, is offered all season. And I think what you're pointing to in the question or the comment is the fact that there's amazing foodways in destinations of all shapes and sizes, and many of those have to do with the traditions, the histories and heritages and cultures behind the food of those destinations, and those are part of that tourism experience. And if it's canning or if it's preserving or if it's a process or a tradition that takes place not when people typically travel, if that's a great thing for destination development and kind of stretching out that season and bringing people into spaces and places that, at times that they wouldn't typically travel.
Wafa, you're on mute.
So the Museum of Surrey has just received a grant for building a new Indigenous carving center at the historic Stewart Farm in South Surrey. So we board members are thrilled and excited. So yeah, just letting us know and letting our people know. Thank you. One day today behavior for our kids. Yeah, for Rachel. I have a question. So how can we as travelers be conscious about not to overwhelm small communities? Yeah, that's
I maybe add to this. Omar and I have had lots of great conversations with parks people in the past, and it has something to do with kids that I feel, maybe because I have a daughter, it's been really, really clear to me in the last few years that we as the tourism industry have been so concerned about attracting people and making money from tourists that we have forgotten to tell them how to behave. So Instagrammable tourism has become a big issue, even though now we're not allowed to travel out of the country and we're trying to travel more domestically. We're still so focused on the economic impact, we forget about the social and environmental impact. And so, when I used to be able to have kids come over to my house to play with my daughter, I had rules. You take your shoes off, right? You eat your snack in the kitchen. If you are badly behaved, I'll ask you to leave, or I'll call their parents and say, I'm sorry, but these play dates aren't really good. Those kinds of things as parents becomes inherent to your children. And if you don't tell your children to have boundaries, then they pretty much run you over. And so I feel like that's the same thing that we as tourism providers or planners or marketers or city councilors or policymakers or park wardens or whoever you are, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are human beings, and we will push boundaries to see how far we can get. And so those boundaries are not necessarily mean. The stick approach isn't great, but the nudging approach of, hey, you have a much better view of the stars if you turn off your lights, is appealing to us as visitors because we increase our experience. But again, it gives a very clear message about what is acceptable and what is not. Like, please, when you go on a guided tour, and the Indigenous cultures are way better at it than everyone else, but they'll be like, you pack in what you pack it in and you pack it out, no exceptions. I'm sorry if somebody speaks out of turn, they will be asked to leave, those kinds of things. It's about respect, but it's also about putting boundaries in place. And I think that we as tourists need to realize that being told what to do isn't such a terrible thing. It's just about the delivery of the message. And we really need to start focusing on, it's not about just getting people to come and visit us or going to visit someone and checking it off our bucket list and consuming an experience. We want to be transformed and engaged. And we also need to play by the rules, because rules are what makes things work. And I think we've really forgotten those kinds of things.
I think
people
each
like
of us, if I just
people like
to
get told what to do.
And each of us is an ambassador. I mean, the better things go, the better it is for all of us in the industry that we're in, and the cleaner things are, and the less environmental issues and infractions there are. I think it's a success story, and more of a reason to grow the industry. But yeah, I mean, we have basic rules in the park, and they've not always been respected. I think in the last year, it's never been this bad. And so I think it's on all of us to encourage that culture of respect, of appreciation, of conservation, and be incredible ambassadors. I think it's on all of us to do that.
Just to add, I was saying people like to get told what to do. This is a service that we can provide. You know, people left to their own devices and facilities don't always choose the right thing, not because they don't want to choose the right thing, because they don't know what the right thing is or how to behave responsibly. So, you know, I'll use a food reference. Remember when we used to have those really huge menus, the anxiety that people would get in a restaurant trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. When people started to use short menus, you have a lot easier, ordering. You've got a lot, higher economic impact, better margins, and you've got more meaningful experiences. So people want to be told what to do. They want the controls.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you about this. So there's one question from Hannah Saab about opportunity. What opportunities exist where agritourism involves working on a farm or to learn more about the food cycle and the food production?
There's no universal definition of agritourism. That was confirmed in 2019 at the First World Congress on Agritourism South Tyrol. Agritourism is simply an expression of how food is manifest and created and shared and processed in a place. So I think there's, depending on where you are in Canada and then where you are in the world, there's different ways to connect with the farm or a food producing place, and on-farm experiences are one of those. Whether or not in India, you can drive an ox and get a little license, and that's part of the whole experience of an on-farm experience. Whereas, in other settings, it may be simply an appreciation for a process or an activity that's taking place that you can't get involved in. But it's completely up to the community and to, more specifically, the operators and their comfort levels and the safety of the place in which that they're operating, because it is a place of production.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there are some volunteering websites where you can look for
Woofing, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a question about the recording will be available afterwards. I think yes, but we'll check with Kelly again and send you an answer, a definite answer for this. If the way to people's heart is through their stomachs, are you finding that home baking with local products would be worth exploring? Thinking traditional recipes, local markets, and farms for ingredients. Not exactly new, but
I would say it's all about the marketing. Great ideas are great ideas, but Field of Dreams, just because you build it, it doesn't mean people will come. If nobody knows about it, that's the thing. But I think authenticity is really a big thing. There's been a lot of, I would say, greenwashing, or people trying to do things and labeling it as something else. And so it's the partnerships. There's so many well-established food networks right now. You can just go onto Trevor's website and you'll find tons of them. But to explore that, making sure you're doing it the right way. And I think we could always use more great products. And somebody mentioned earlier, if you're in Ontario, try the Spark program to start out your idea. There's some really great social enterprises that help you get ideas off the ground. The tourism industry is a fun, engaging place to work. We all love each other. It's why we're in it, because we like to travel and we like to meet new people and we like to try new things. And so if you're thinking about getting into the industry, by all means, come join us, but you need to ensure that it's a viable opportunity, right? You need to make money from your business venture, but you need to make sure that the environment and the culture are not dismissed as part of that venture.
Yes, great. Thank you. That's great ideas for social enterprise. And we put in the comments, in fact, a link about the innovation in tourism businesses too. So people can pitch their ideas or can learn about how to make their own social enterprise that's related to tourism there. So I think we come to a closing. Is there anything else anybody wants to share or add here? We still have a couple of minutes.
I would just say that I think if anybody is interested in all these answers, Omar and Sebastian and Trevor have answers to all sorts of stuff. I'm happy to answer questions too, but you've got 3 really amazing resources here. So now that you have access to their emails, take full advantage of it. Thank you.
And Rachel is one of Canada's leading experts on sustainable tourism and over-tourism, and very humble. And so Rachel is also an incredible resource, and now you have her email address as well.
Thank you. Yes, on for doing this. So great. Thank you, everybody. We have everybody has been so great in this panel. So thank you, Sebastian, Rachel, Trevor, and Omar for the lovely discussion. This was very dynamic as promised. So as event attendees, you will be registered for our newsletter to stay up to date for our future events. Look for the next chapter events and for other chapters events in the newsletter as well. Our newsletter also includes roundups and resources for traveling more mindfully, like the blog post and tips and best practices. And I'm talking about ITA newsletter, global newsletter. If you're interested in joining the Impact Travel Toronto team, we will be sharing a link to an application form to volunteer in our post-event email. Please fill in this application and we can look at it and you can join us. Thank you again and looking forward to seeing you at our next events. When we say Travel Canada, we think outdoors camping, lakeside cottage parks, but Canada has lots of diversity to offer and lots of, it is dispersed diversity on vast land, but it is also, it has unique offers like the Arctic, the subarctic terrains, the Rockies, the rivers and the lakes, the serious winters too, and gorgeous summers. So welcome traveler and panelists to exchange connections and to ask questions beyond the event. Contact us on, comment on our Facebook page. If we inspired you today for a new bucket list and to travel Canada in sustainable ways, please comment and send us your, how did this event gave you ideas and inspired you. And let's all open our horizons, expand our horizons on our belonging and our connection to the land and the people to become a larger connection and deeper. It takes a village to bring a family and to bring people in, but it also takes us to be committed to our land to become a village. So thank you everybody for being here. And I think we come to a close. Thank you.
Thank you, Alpa. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.